we're ready to start it from the top?
Yeah.
All right. So I've watched like one or two of the episodes. Maybe I should watch them down the road as well. But my understanding is the main focus of this show is to like talk about what's it like to be trans, what are your experiences like coming out, etc. But also, I guess something we can get into a little bit is like intercommunity drama and how like toxic like trans spaces can be.
Oh, yeah. If you want, we can also touch on the Destiny stuff later. No, I'm just kidding. Let's not do that. Let's not do that.
Oh wow, that's a lot of lag between my audio and.
I'm coming right back just to commit suicide again. That's what I'm doing.
Oh dear.
Career suicide with the Destiny stuff.
Anyways, where was I? Oh yes.
Talking about yes. Go ahead.
So this was actually something that I wanted to talk to you about before like all the Lucifer drama got me ejected, but like not knowing that you're trans, like part of what made it really difficult for me to find myself is that like I had a very like black and white way of thinking of what gender dysphoria is like, or what what a like a trans like clinical case looked like. So like when I imagined a trans person as someone who is like a ostensibly cis het with like a goatee, I expected, or trans woman specifically, I expected someone who had a very feminine childhood, like made a feeble attempt to cut off their own penis when they were 4, and like had a full-on like trauma, has like a perpetual trauma response to like their sexual anatomy and like their sexually dimorphic traits and existing to in society as a gender that's not within their gender identity. Like, so like that's, I was very transmedicalist for a while when I was like, you remember Gamergate and shit. Like, yeah. I got very involved in like the anti-SJW community and Tumblr back around the early 2010s. So like I was wondering at the time if I was trans because of some of the feelings I was experiencing. But then the orthodoxy and sort of anti-SJW spaces I was put in was that of transmedicalism. And that's how gender dysphoria was basically described to me at the time. Perpetual trauma response to having a foreign gendered body and foreign gendered existence. And I was like, well, that can't possibly be me. I guess I'm just going to suffer with this body that I have, that feels like a bastardization of anything I'd ever want to be. And it wasn't until 25. So like around in my mid-20s, that's when I just was sort of bi-curious, I guess. And so for a while I existed as just like a straight guy. But like in my early tweens and adolescence, I would describe myself in retrospect as being very androphilic. Like I was very aesthetically attracted to penises. My sexual fantasies involved males. In fact, something I was just telling about a friend of mine who she's a practicing pagan who believes in like Greek mythology to some extent. And I was like, oh, I take it you were a big fan of the Percy Jackson books as a kid? And she was like, hell yeah. And then I also, I didn't put it in as explicit terms as I'm about to now. I said that I was very thirsty for Percy at the time. Like, I, as like a 13-year-old like kid, I fucking wanted Percy's dick. Like,
oh my god.
See, not to say that I want it now because I am an adult and he would be too young for me. Goes without saying. Since we have a reputation to uphold.
Yes. Yeah, of course. Well, that we're both easily cancelable.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it is what it is.
Yeah, so those sort of androphilic feelings sort of I had a emerging like interest in girls like in mid-puberty, like 14, 15-ish, and then I kind of just swept my feelings for guys and for penis under the rug. It and I was like, well, I can just be a straight guy now, which is like the normal thing. So let's do that. And sometimes I joke about being like bi-curious or being like, oh, that guy's really cute, ha ha ha. But yeah, for a while I existed just as a straight guy. And then I found out about femboys sometime around 2018. I found myself being very sexually attracted to femboys. Um, at first, my thought about this was like, I'm a straight guy. I'm only attracted to them because they look like women. And like, it's just like the caveman, like, part of my brain for like curves, femaleness is lighting up at the sight of smooth, womanly skin and curves. But as then I engaged with that a little bit more and like realized, no, I kind of really like the dick on these femboys. So yeah, that was, and like a couple years later or 3 years later, that's when I formally came out on Twitter as being bisexual. I was also cross-dressing at the time. I was a femboy. And then just around the time that I got to know you, back in the fall of 2021, I had recently come out on the internet as non-binary. I had some intent to medically transition and socially transition, but mostly it was just me being a femboy on the internet. But I did do some subtle things to try to like build myself up to more complete social transition. So like I started painting my nails and like wearing eye makeup and going out like that, or wearing crop tops with like boy jeans. Being that was my idea of like androgyny at the time. But it was very obvious I was a guy. And I remember like started work at a very like queer restaurant. I was a line cook there, and it was a topic with like the front of house, just how gay everyone was, and we don't have like almost no cishet white guys. And they asked me, "What about you, Alex?" That's the name I was going by at the time. Are you a cishet white guy? And I was like, "I'm bisexual and non-binary." I just dropped it without really thinking about it. And then they asked me what my pronouns were, and I said they slash any. Um, and yeah, so they made me comfortable enough. I started going into work more and more with like lipstick, eye makeup, nails painted, etc. Um, and I also put like pride pins on like my work hat as well. Um, and that was like the first stage of finding myself like as a trans person. My sort of foot in the door, so to speak. But that, of course, was not the end point. I remember at the time really loathing my body, even though I had lost a bunch of weight recently, and I was more twinkish, being like, no, my hips are way badly proportioned compared to the rest of my body. All this disgusting man body hair I'm constantly shaving off. My hairline is obviously receding. Um, so it just this very strong disgust response towards like my own body and like maleness to some extent, but at the same time I couldn't like it was very difficult to conceptualize myself as a woman or being a future woman um, when I identified as non-binary. And I believe that what I wanted more than anything was to be a very like ambiguous androgyne, where like people taking a glance at me would not know which gender I am and just kind of default to they. Like that's
Right.
what I wanted.
Yeah.
I do believe to this day that such a person kind of does exist or should exist, and that non-binary is an authentic trans identity. It's something that we should look into more clinically on like how to like make people androgynous or like how such an identity might manifest. But I've kind of stumbled into myself accidentally as a trans woman, and I think that's been for the best. So non-binary. Yeah. So one thing, so I wanted more hips. I wanted womanly skin. I wanted I guess more feminine fat distribution, but not necessarily like full on woman. But one thing that I was very like afraid of was breast growth, and that's what made me delay taking HRT for an entire year. In fact, something that I was thinking of DIYing was selective estrogen reception modulators, which have an estrogenic effect, but not in like the in terms of causing breast growth was how I understood at the time.
Yeah.
But then someone else in my workplace who was also AMAB, identifies non-binary and bi, or actually no, they were more ace. Well, she's a she now. She said that she was going to Planned Parenthood to start HRT, and I was like, tell me more about that. And she explained how easy it is to do informed consent. And I was like, well, I guess there's already the very established model for like cross-sex medical transition, but not so much what I wanted to do, which was androgynous medical transition. But then I started asking around, like, how would I get selective estrogen reception modulators? And someone actually misinformed me on the internet that Planned Parenthood, they can hook you up. That was not the case.
You really believe people would do that? Just go on the internet and tell lies?
Yeah. So, where was I? Oh, I got distracted by something. So, I made the appointment. I showed up, and they seemed like completely like unaware of what like selective estrogen reception modulators were, and I was like raloxifene, Tamil. I forgot what the other big one was. Starts with a T. And they told me, no, we only offer estradiol and spironolactone. So I was like, okay, maybe I can try low dose monotherapy estradiol. That might probably won't cause appreciable breast growth. So I go for it. Well, actually, after I left that appointment and picked up my prescription, I decided to create like a bucket list things to do before transitioning. So I think they were bench 100 pounds.
I remember this.
Yes, bench 100 pounds, have sex one more time as a biological male, and then bank sperm. Because I knew that even at lower doses, this would probably have a pretty strong effect on fertility. So I did do that in like just a couple months' time, and
you finished everything on the bucket list, so to speak.
Yeah, in just like 2 months' time.
Oh wow! Look at you.
I cannot, however, bench 100 pounds anymore because I had a wrist injury that was related to one of the things on the list.
Oh no! Was it something to the effect of the sound of one hand clapping?
No, actually. So like I wanted so like I thought of myself being like a sort of a semi-muscly or tough twink. So on video, I had this guy I was with, and like I decided to deadlift him, and yeah, so I find it's easy to like squat people, getting them
Yeah.
onto your back and then standing up, but just the way the human body is shaped, like gripping them and lifting them, like it doesn't really work. So I injured one of my wrists doing that, so I couldn't do any upper body workouts for a while. And I also soon after banked a sperm and started HRT. And when my wrist was good enough to start benching again, lo and behold, I could not do 100 anymore. Oh well. And honestly, these days, I don't really do upper body workouts at all. I only do lower. And if I am doing any upper body workouts, like very lightweight. Um, yeah, because I kind of want my upper body muscles to atrophy a bit because some of these issues I've been talking about are fairly persistent with like aversion towards my body. Like I feel like my thorax is proportionally too large compared to my hips. It's gotten better. Like part of me dooming at the time of having my egg crack was thinking like, oh, even if I do start some sort of estrogenic medication, I'm 25. My hip bones are fused together. I'm fully developed. My hips will never grow. This is fucking pointless. But as I've learned, no, my hips are a fair bit bigger now. Like I think both my waist and my hips were roughly 30. I think I was like 30 inches for a waist when I was a twink, and like 34 or 32 inches for like my hips around the panty line. But now it's more like 36 for hips around the panty line and 40 inches around the socket. So circumference is better on the hips, especially with like me working out. And also I measured like width, and that's about like, I forgot what the exact measurements were, but it was like a 0.75 hip to waist ratio in terms of width, and that's good, I think. But what I'm realizing is a lot of like trans people will, through like 4chan memes, they'll obsess over the wrong thing in terms of like what makes you clocky. It's like you can have shoulders that are bigger than your hips, like a lot of cis women do. Hip to waist ratio isn't as important as people chalk it up to be, even though having a nice hourglass looks very sexy. But it's more so thorax to hip ratio is what I'm starting to realize is what makes you look clocky. So my hips are marginally wider than my thorax. So like my underbust is 34 inches, and like my hips down at like the socket level are like 40 inches. I'm doing circumference. I know I really obsess over this crap.
I used to too. I mean, when I started transition, I document all of my measurements like crazy. I did like everything from my chest to my hips to my arms, legs, all of it.
Yeah, and also knowing your measurements is good for when you're socially transitioning, how to size yourself.
That's right.
And I'm actually going to do an MTF passing guide fairly soon, and I'm going to talk about like form-fitting clothes, what's most flattering on your particular body, that sort of thing. Because oh boy, was when I started socially transitioning, it was very awkward. So like I dressed almost like a femboy does, like early into like MTF social transition where I started girl moding. Like I look at a lot of my old pics where I have like the thinning hair and like the a very toothy AGP smirk and like my um and very like femboy coded clothing choices, and it's kind of cringy in retrospect. But I just listened to an interview between Calvin Gara and Riley Grace Rochong, and something that came up is when you're trans, you you should be allotted a margin of time where you're allowed to be cringy or screw up. Because I know I did.
Yeah. I think that's true for everyone. I mean, when I started, I actually, what was it, like a couple weeks ago or something like that? I posted a picture of myself that I had just come across. I spent some time like going through and archiving all these old photos that I didn't want to look at anymore because they would just bring back bad memories. And a lot of like the assets and stuff I did for people in the Lucy Cord were part of that. So yeah. So anyway, I was looking through those photos and I found this photo of myself from 2021 that I completely forgot existed. And it is bad. It's really bad. But I ended up posting it.
I think I might take off this hat. It's warm in here.
Go ahead. But yeah, I posted it and it's just absolutely crazy how much different I look now versus how I looked back then, you know? I think everybody should be afforded that period of cringe adjustment. Let's call it that.
Sure. Oh wait, my bangs are a bit screwy right now. There we go. I think.
I like your bangs.
Perfect. Thank you. It's actually been a while since I've had a professional haircut. Something I've been doing recently is I just do the emo thing where I style my curtains, my bangs myself using a razor blade.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And it creates that sort of a look that I have right now where it's a very like rough around the edges emo look, and I kind of like it. But I'll probably get a professional haircut again soon. Something that another thing, voice training. Oh my god, I figured that out very early. How to like speak in the feminine resonance. I recognize a name. There's someone in this chat whom I have a bit of a history with, who was very critical of me at the time and my cringiness. And I remember when like parting ways, being like, I want to be good at transition and pass just to fucking show her. So I remember at this restaurant I mentioned earlier, they decided to cross-train me in front of house. And the boss even mentioned, like, hey, if you want, for like at front of house, you can wear a skirt if you like. I was like, oh, snap. So I wore my work uniform shirt with a skirt and a cardigan. And I just was at the podium for the host stand before we opened, just going over and over again, heat from fire, fire from heat, heat from fire, fire from heat. And I remember like the first day that I hosted, there was this like 8-year-old girl who asked me, ma'am, can you bring me some ranch? And when a kid genders you correctly, that's a very special thing because although they might not have as high standards for what is a woman, what is a man, and might just mistake a long-haired man for a woman sometimes if he's enough of a twink, but children they're not trying to be nice. Like they just say what their impression of you is. They just spit it out.
Yeah.
Exactly. They're very unfiltered. And I found more and more as I was girl moding, like people would just default to ma'am or treat me as a woman. And I look at a lot of my old photos from very early into social transition. And also I was like Hondosing myself initially because I thought I was non-binary and I was afraid of breast growth. But then something I found is even for a lot of while I was identifying as non-binary, I was wearing a lot of sports bras. It just for me it just felt indecent not to. And like I utilized sports bras to do like the whole femboy thing in a lot of my pics. And I just every day in day-to-day life, under my like even if I was just boy moding, I would always be wearing a sports bra. It just I didn't feel complete without it. And then one time I was trying on clothes in a Discord call, like a few months into gender transition. I think my breasts were already budding and I was like 10 or 2. And I was like, well, thinking like, this is a point of where do I want to go from here? And then someone suggested, why don't you put socks in your sports bra and then put on clothes like that? So I tried it, and I was like, actually, I really like how this looks. Like, I used to be very dysphoric about my shoulders, and I found that by having a bust, it made me not look like a guy. It made me just look like a sort of footchy, big-shouldered woman, and I really liked that. And I was like, I committed that in my next appointment, I'd actually go for more of like typical trans doses. And oh yeah, for a lot of for about 6 months into social transition as a woman and like on HRT, I didn't call myself a trans woman. I called myself uh, not femme non-binary. I think it was a non-binary trans femme. I think that's the label I used for myself. Whereas now I consider myself more so MTF or MTF transsexual or just a woman. Like, I don't really disclose that I'm a trans woman to most people in my day-to-day life unless like I trust them, they're friendly, or like maybe there's a chance of being intimate with them, in which case they should know in advance. But
Very
in my
important.
day-to-day life,
Very important.
In my day-to-day life, I do not like advertise my transness. Like, I might be very forthcoming with the fact that I'm polyamorous and bisexual, but I just talk in this cadence of voice. I wear very form-fitting, normally womanly clothes. And something I also find is cis women started being really nice to me when I socially transitioned. And I realized it's because they see me as one of them. And women are on their guard around men a lot. And so, like, by being like one of their sisters, they're trusting, they're vulnerable around me. And also, women start complimenting all my outfits. Like, I get so many compliments at school from women on my outfits, like how cute my cardigans are, or my boots, or like my trench coat. The trench coat seems to be awfully popular at school. It's a winter wonderland where I go to school right now. And
well, let me ask you real quick. How is that?
Sure.
I know that over the years, we both have kind of changed our perspectives on how we see ourselves and how we see others and stuff like that. And one of the things that, I thought for a while was that I wanted to give polyamory a shot. And I remember having conversations with you about it when you were starting to open up to that. So how has that been working out for you so far? Are you enjoying it? Is it going off pretty well?
I think I am. Yeah, I think I am polyamorous. Like, I think it's just something that you kind of just are, and you have to discover that part of yourself. So I think that for a lot of very neurotypical people, they're very like, it's like an evolutionary instinct to be predisposed towards singular pair bonding. And when they cheat on people, that's not just them being horny. That means like something went wrong in the relationship and they don't want to forego that relationship, but they also want to branch out. That's usually what cheating is. But what I find is that I just don't feel possessive over people I have feelings over. So like, honestly, like if I see someone like touching like a partner of mine and or even like cuddle or kiss, I find it like really cute and adorable. And it makes me happy for the other person. And also I find I just don't like being tied down to one person. Like, I like being able to like date or hook up with other people despite being in a committed relationship. That's just kind of how I roll. So like, I can feel jealousy in the sense of like, I'm afraid of losing people or I'm afraid of being abandoned. So that's something that does need to be discussed in polyamory. Polyamory is not complete absence of jealousy, but I find the way I categorize it, there's two like ways of being jealous. There's possessive jealousy and then there's insecure jealousy. So I definitely experience insecure jealousy. Whereas excuse me. Oh yes. where like you're afraid of losing someone or someone abandoning you. But there's possessive jealousy where it's more takes a form of like, that is my partner, do not touch them. Like where there's an automatic response of like, this person is mine. And I think that's very inherent to like for a lot of people how like instinctual pair bonding works. Whereas like I'm autistic, so I don't feel that as strongly or like really much at all. So I find it very naturally predisposes me towards polyamory. For a while, I think around the time I started talking to you, like in the loose accord, I was hoping to be in an open relationship, but I was like too dysphoric to really set up a dating profile or seek out people for relationships. For the most part, and but I want an open relationship, um, and not for exclusive monogamy.
Yeah. I think I just picked the worst people to be in a relationship for polyamory.
Yeah.
I mean, you were there for some of that. You saw some of the stuff that.
Mm-hmm.
A nightmare.
I mean, I saw like I have secondhand accounts of what it was like for you, and also like I realized my first serious relationship as a trans woman, that was not a suboptimal exploration of polyamory. Like it made me realize that I'm polyamorous. Like I remember when I started university, like I was committed to Ashley, but there was this very like emo gothy guy who would wear like platform boots, and he was like a big fan of Nine Inch Nails, and like thinking like, oh, he's potentially boyfriend material, and like even trying hitting on him a little bit, but it never really went anywhere. And like that realization of like, wait a second, because Ashley's polyamorous, and polyamory allows you to have both a boyfriend and a girlfriend. To this day, I've not successfully obtained a boyfriend. So I've become much closer with women through transitioning. I understand them a lot better being one, but men, like, I kind of jokingly call myself well, not even necessarily jokingly call myself like a misandrist femcel. Like, I'm actually starting to fucking hate men because of like the election and shit. And men are kind of pigs, and testosterone is poison. So yeah, their existence is a tragic accident. Okay, maybe not that far, but
well, one other thing I wanted to touch on was you said that your experience since transition that cis women are a lot nicer to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I find that in reality, that's true. I find that when you go on Twitter and you see all these like TERF accounts that are constantly berating trans women and stuff, they're a very vocal minority, is what it is.
Oh yeah, like women also tend to be just much more understanding of like trans people. Like it's primarily men who are transphobic, I find.
Yeah. Well, when you hear about these cases of like somebody hooking up with a trans woman, and then later on, like that person comes back and assaults them or kills them or something like that, you know, it's always men that are the perpetrators of that. It's not women.
What I found is that women are less afraid of being raped by non-op trans women than men are afraid that being attracted to a trans woman will make them gay somehow. Like that's the extent to how much more accepting cis women are than like cis men towards trans people or trans women specifically.
Yeah. Well, was there anything else you wanted to talk about the process of your transition before we dive into some kind of like cultural inter-community stuff?
I think it was just a lot of trial and error on how to socially present. But Oh, also something that really was a godsend, and I feel like unfortunately is often inaccessible for a lot of trans people is laser hair removal. So I had really nasty beard shadow and razor burn
Oh,
coming into this. Um, but like right now, I'm not wearing foundation. Like this is just how my face looks. I'm just wearing lipstick and um, eyeshadow, and I also did some liquid eyeliner.
yeah.
Oh yeah, mascara in my brows as well. So it's meant to be like decorative. Oh yeah, I also did some blush, but no foundation. Um, I as I progressed through laser, I just found I didn't really need it, and I'm pretty sure using foundation every day isn't necessarily good for your skin. But
No,
if
you
you're,
should use a moisturizer every day, but
that's
um,
another thing. I'm very minimalistic when it comes to skincare,
yeah,
and
same.
I feel like a lot of people should be that way. Like soap is a chemical that removes dirt and grease. Um, so, like, when you really lather yourself up in the shower and use like scalding hot water, you're going to dry yourself out. Um, I find a lot of people's hygiene habits are sort of shooting themselves in the foot, and they wonder like, why do I need to moisturize so much? Blah 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 blah. And it's like, because you're taking out all your natural oils. Or like people who complain like, why is my hair so frizzy? Are you shampooing it every day? Yeah, that's why. Um,
But yeah, but
stuff
I
like
mean, like
that.
here too, especially the climate is really dry. So,
Oh yeah,
and I feel like the water from my spigots is like especially hard. So, like when I wash
Mhm.
my hands a couple times a day, I'll notice that I start to like crack a little bit. So I have to use lotion on my
Yeah.
hands constantly.
That's why I find during the winter months I do have to lotion my hands, but that's about it for skincare. Also, I use a chemical exfoliant in the shower for anything that I want to shave, but that's really it.
I do have a question from chat that says, how many guys did Sasha date before transitioning?
Um, before transitioning, I had a one-off sexual experience with a guy when I was 18, um, where basically he was a gay friend of mine, and I went over to his place to play video games. But then he came on to me, and despite me identifying as a straight guy at the time, I was kind of flattered, and like I remember like petting him, and like the feeling of like providing nurture and comfort to him was a very nice feeling. And then he like kissed me, and he was I don't know if I just wasn't very into it, or what it was, but or if he was a crappy kisser, but that was a little awkward. And then he performed oral sex on me. I did consent to this, to be clear. This was not rape. Um,
Sure. Of course.
mhm. And yeah, that was a very one-off experience. And also, just before I started HRT, I'm somewhat public about this. I traveled out to Ohio to see Femboy Capitalist, another non-controversial, wholesome person who has no skeletons in their closet like us.
Of course, right. Yeah.
And that went really well, I think. Well, I did learn the hard way that I do not like butt stuff, but everything else went really well. And I remember, like, when on the drive home, or when I went on the drive home, thinking like I spent 2 nights with him, and like just that experience of like having a body beside me when I went to bed, like it was an amazing feeling, and being like, oh, I'm guessing I have to get used to just being alone when I sleep for a little bit. um and that's another thing, I not like cohabitated with any of my partners. So like I like the solitude a little bit, but of just how private my dorm room is. But yeah, can get lonely also.
Yeah,
Oh
I
yeah.
find that I don't really like sleeping alone. I had to do that a
Mhm.
lot in my last relationship. For some reason, I had two girlfriends, and yet often I would be alone in bed at night. So Yeah, I was not so much a fan of that, especially after all of the trauma and stuff that I went through. I kind of like the security of having someone next to me every night.
Yeah.
Mandy is more than happy to be next to me every night. I
Oh.
really love her a lot. Right?
I remember, like, I actually, like, when you were in the toxic polycule, like, floating to Mandy, like, hey, you two might be really compatible with each other, but then again, she doesn't date people in their 20s, so I don't know, but maybe it's worth a shot.
And Mandy's not that much younger than me.
Mhm.
I think she's like,
Honestly, I'm
what,
just
6 years? Yeah, 6 years. 6 years younger.
Honestly, I'm just not picky about age. It's about the person as an individual. Obviously,
Okay.
I want them to not be too young for me. So, um, like if someone tells me they're 18, that kind of just gives me the ick at my age of 28, turning 29 soon. But otherwise, like everyone is. So long as I'm attracted to them, so long as they're like interesting and not like screwy or screw in a way that's incompatible,
Right.
then yeah. So like I'm seeing this. So like for example, I'm 28, turning 29 soon. Jalen also will turn 32 soon, and I'm also seeing this one chick who's 39. Um, oh yeah, she also has a 10-year-old daughter, the 39-year-old. So she's like an actual like trans milf. So that's kind of cool.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like, I agree about the age thing. Like, it's like, how much do I really have in common with an 18 or 19-year-old, you know?
Well,
Like,
also it's the feeling of like you're not fully fledged as of an adult yet at just 18. Like you're
right.
still figuring out adulthood. And it feels gross to like um pursue someone in that sort of way is my
Yeah.
feeling.
I think it's kind of naive to be like one of these people that goes on social media and thinks that, oh, the minute that you turn 18, you become a fully fledged adult and fully conscious of the world around you and you know everything. No, that's not how it works. I didn't know half of what I was doing until I was like 25 at least, you know?
Hmm.
Like that was when
Yeah, for
I like
sure.
finally started to get my career on track and when I was living in Reno, I believe. I had like my own
Hmm.
place and all that stuff. Took a long time, but I got there.
And there's also the tendency, which I find is even more common, which is to say that like, oh, a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old, that's pet, or like
Odd.
18-year-old and like 24 pet, when it's like, okay, whether you think that a age gap like that is appropriate or not, it's clearly not pedophilia.
Okay.
Um,
Did you see the article
anyways,
about the like the girl that tricked someone into like meeting up with her or something? And then like
uh,
the group of kids like ran after the guy and started calling him a pet even though she said that she was 18 years old.
no,
It
that's
happened on some
awful.
college campus or something. But yeah, fucking wild. These fucking predator hunters or whatever.
Hmm. And that's a thing, like, I feel like this is why I have like sort of a fedora tipping take on pedophilia, that we should view it purely for like a psychology clinical lens, where it's attraction to prepubescent children, because like everyone's at a different stage of their life, and like late adolescence and early adulthood, like there are people who into their 30s still kind of look like teenagers, but there's also like 17-year-old boys who look like 30-year-old men. At the same time, like it's not the physical appearance that makes it predatory for like an older adult to date a teenager. It's the gaps in maturity and like development and wisdom and experience.
Well, obviously, I want to state for the record, it's bad. Don't do that stuff.
Hmm.
If you feel you have those feelings, go seek help. But
Sure.
Yeah, no, when I was growing up, we had this neighbor kid who hit puberty super, super early.
Hmm.
And he, by the time he was like 15, he weighed like 200 pounds. He had a full beard. His voice was super fucking deep. And
Hmm.
so my brother would have him go to the gas station and buy cigarettes for him. And,
Mm.
it being Kentucky and stuff, of course, people were lax with carding individuals. And, this is back in like the early aughts, so, um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I mean, people just believed him because he looked like he was 30 plus, and
Hmm.
he sounded like it, and he carried himself like it. Um, so it's crazy how, puberty can hit people differently.
Hmm.
Um, for me, I don't feel like I really got hit by it at all.
Lucky.
To an extent, yeah, I guess. I mean, I had the laser and stuff. I've still got some stragglers that I can't get rid of because they're too blonde, but um like I don't feel the need to go out and wear foundation or really any makeup. I never wear any makeup.
Yeah. Something I do recommend for like social transition is eye makeup is a real lifesaver if like you have a clocky orbital bones. But depending on how lucky you are with cranial structure, going for a very no makeup naturalistic look is there. It's doable.
Well, I also got really
So
lucky with the assault too because they really they really cut my jaw down quite.
yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I try to look on the bright side, that's
Hmm.
all I can really
In
do.
this case, literally the bright side of a train wreck.
Literally. Like that. Oh god. Lucky I survived all that.
Yeah, I'm really happy to have you in my life after everything.
Of course, me too.
So, inter-community drama, and like, should we get into that?
Yeah, I think that's a good segue. I think that's a perfect
Yeah.
segue.
So, I mentioned before how like cis women are really friendly towards me and trusting. However, if I'll just put this in very politically incorrect terms, if you are not only clocky, but you act very male-brained or like sexually aggressive towards women as a trans woman, I imagine most cis women will not treat you with that sort of vulnerability or trust that they treat me with. Um, like, and there are some trans women who genuinely like do either have this mentality that they don't need to put a good faith effort to acting like a normal woman, or really struggle with like finding themselves and being womanly and behaving in a normally feminine manner. Um, and there's a tendency, um, and I've even was touching on this in the lucid chord, where like to go about self ID in the most like toxic, like reductive way, where there's nothing more to being a gender than just declaring that that's what I am. Like, oh, by the way, I'm a man now, Aaron. Do you believe me? Okay. Yeah, I'm not. I was kidding.
At least you don't say that you're a rabbit.
Yeah, that would be very cringe if we both knew a person who.
It'd be
Anyways,
extremely cringe if this person faked a suicide attempt to get attention from her girlfriend.
oh yeah. Um, anyways, um, should we talk about like the Lucicord stuff and like trans community toxicity?
Sure.
So before I appeared for this interview, I was reading off to my stream a sort of an edited document that I meant to release in early 2022. So if you remember what the Lucicord was like, it was, especially in like the Destiny channels, it was hypersexual. And like the way that like trans women flirt with each other, where it's like, haha, gawk, girl dick, love it. Like, I kind of mirrored that to some extent, even though I wasn't yet a trans woman. And I was sort of very retroactively impugned as being a chaser for that, or for being sexually aggressive when everyone was very like lackadaisical or carefree about hitting on each other. It was
Well, I
never
think it was
really.
like social pressure, you know? I mean, when you're in a group like that, you want to act like everyone else in the group.
Yeah,
So
there was an element of that.
yeah. And I mean, I was also retroactively impugned for that. People called me a sex pest and stuff for shit like that. And it's just like everyone was doing the same shit, you know?
Hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah, and yeah, there's also a tendency to very like bad faith weaponize like that sort of predator or sex pest label, like intercommunity. Um, Even though that's like a very big like what's the word, like a transphobic trope that like trans women are predators, and like calling each other predators over like things that maybe either aren't a big deal or were kind of just a mistake that that reasonable people can make. Like, it's really crazy. And also I think also something that I experienced in Lucicord was I think I was the only one who didn't subscribe to the whole like there's nothing to being trans other than saying you're trans. Like, I felt like no, there's a strong feeling underlying gender identity, even if we don't want to go for the very true scum gatekeepy model. Like, there's more to being a gender than just saying you are. And but people just called me true scum anyway, even though I was like a very gender fuck femboy non-binary person who had not medically transitioned yet. They were like trying to hit me with how true scum I was, which was, well, at the same time applying double standards to me about what behavior was acceptable because I was not a trans woman who was part of who effectively assimilated into their clique. Very screwy situation. So like I remember reading the document before the stream and being like, oh my god, I put in the editor notes, but I did not need to be this apologetic here. Like, fuck these people. Like,
Yeah.
holy shit.
No, I think it gets to your head, you know, when you're so much like I feel like a lot of the Twitter people put a lot of the main characters in that Discord on a platform, on a pedestal almost.
Oh yeah.
And it felt like people were worshiping them.
Hmm.
You know, that they would have done anything for those people. And
Yeah.
it leads you to a very dangerous mindset where you feel like you're a follower of this person, so you have to always be on this person's side about everything. And when you have that degree of influence, then you like I think I saw a clip recently of another streamer that was talking about the pressure that you can feel um, when someone that you look up to reaches out to you and says, "Hey, do you want to, join this Discord or hang out with me or stuff?" And then later on, they ask you if you want to engage in some sort of like flirtatious or sexual behavior with them. You For the other person, that puts a huge amount of pressure on them because then they have to sit here and think, well, if I say no to them, am I going to lose this, this hangout or this game night or whatever it is that I'm looking forward to with this person? If I say no, am I going to lose that? And so that's kind of
Yeah.
like, I don't know.
Yeah, I find a very big thing is I think there's the reasonable expectations for consent and there's like going above and beyond. And if you really want to go above and beyond, you have to like put in a little extra work where people not just feel where you're not just like trying to get affirmative consent and stuff and be very open to like their boundaries, but also like putting them in a mindset or making them feel like it's safe for them to
Right.
express boundaries or say no. Um, I find that's a very important thing that I try to practice a lot, and I kind of get into that in the document. So something that I did to blame myself is I mentioned how neurotic I was in the Discord and how, like, even if I didn't express it, my self-esteem was kind of tied to these sexual interactions, and how I was like, oh, maybe people, even if I wasn't putting the pressure on people, maybe they felt pressured, or. But now I'm realized, like, no, that's bullshit. Um, really, it's just that I rocked the boat too much there, and people weren't there for it. So, in addition to kicking me to the curb, they had to make sure no one pitied me by canceling me. So,
I empathize with that 100%.
mhm,
Um, but I mean, it was more than that. It was like it was like an organized effort to ostracize you from that community.
mhm,
And I do want to apologize for my part in that. I mean, I remember having that conversation with you and a couple others. Um, but I really didn't need to put myself in that position. Um,
mhm.
I really didn't need to be there. I should have been a little bit more firm and stood up for you um, where I felt like it was wrong. Uh, but it was that pressure, of,
Mhm.
well, if I don't go along with it, then I'm going to lose this community too. Or they're going to do the same
Yeah.
thing to me. And nobody wants that. And
And that's the thing. This was at the tail end of a pandemic when we both found ourselves in the Lucicord. So we were both very lonely, and we were both like in the very early stages of finding ourselves as trans people. So we really needed a place to belong and find others like us. So it, it's extra crushing being ejected from that. Um, when like I felt like I didn't have an alternative, like was in the workplace was like very gay, and I was very shy at first, and I didn't feel like part of the social group. But then, like over time, people were like, "Hey, do you want to go out for drinks afterwards?" So I did that, and that was cool. Now these people from that workplace, I tried staying friends with. A lot of them abandoned me over um, the stuff I'm describing now, which is rejecting the most dogmatic version of self ID, and not being like a Hamas supporting leftist, shit like that. Yeah.
yeah, I feel that that's a really common sentiment in a lot of circles. And it's a shame, really, because it cuts out any kind of other form of thought. And then you don't have any kind of real discussions. You don't really get anywhere. You just become more entrenched in your own beliefs.
Hmm. That's what I find, that we really need each other as like gay people or trans people. Um, and the way in which we are so like the idea behind like not being true scum comes from a good place. Like, hey, let's not stringently like gatekeep trans identities, but at the same time, they exercise a different form of gatekeeping. Like, oh, you're not rigidly conforming to social standards, therefore you're outcast. Whereas like a true scum might be like, oh, you're not trans enough. You're not suffering enough from gender dysphoria. You're not putting enough effort into passing. Therefore, you're cast out of the trans community. It's like sort of the same process, but it comes from very different places. Um, I felt like had one more conclusive point, but oh well.
It's okay. Um, so how do you feel?
Being a trans woman,
Well, getting all the Lucicord stuff out.
um, I guess it's just been kind of a long time coming. Like I didn't address it much because the reason why that document never released until now, like this is 2 years later. Actually, no, 3 years. It's 2025 now. So yeah, that was winter of 2022 when the cancellation happened. Um, it never fully went away. Um, and I thought it would just kind of blow over. People would move on. People wouldn't care that much. And maybe it hurts right now to lose people that I cared about, or that people believe these things that people say about me. But hey, there are other places to belong, other places to go. I can move on from this. I can be gritty. But something that I lamented on while reading that is how optimistic and gritty I am, and that and resilient I am, and that public statement that I was writing, where I don't feel that same resilience now. Like I just feel crushed by like how many people leave or abandon me, and feeling like there's something fundamentally wrong with me as a person, and that I deserve this, etc. It sucks.
Yeah.
But as for Lucicord, I feel like that's all behind me. But as for like other people who abandoned me, like yeah, and like we need each other, and especially with like the Trump era that and like the descent into fascism that we're headed into now, like um part of what gave me the courage to transition was this is Biden's America. You can do this. It's easy for me to access HRT. But being trans is not going to be easy in the near future, it looks like. So it's good that I um, benefited from the time period that I came from, but um, yeah, we need each other. We shouldn't do this toxic bullshit with like gatekeeping and clicky bullying and social ostracization and stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think I feel the same way about the video that I put out. You know, it was a long time coming, and I feel differently about it now than I did when everything was happening. Obviously, it was like I was at like bottom of the barrel when things were going on, but now I just feel like I can finally move on and put a lot of it behind me. And I totally agree with you that we need to kind of come together and, you know, not be this kind of clicky group of assholes all the time. So yeah, I mean, I've always been happy to have conversations with people about stuff, try to build bridges again, but you know, there are some people that I'm not going to afford that courtesy to.
Yeah, I'm glad we afforded that to each other after everything.
Yeah, me too. All right. You want to wrap up here?
I guess. So I expressed a lot of pessimism, but at the same time, I feel like there's a lot of beauty in like being a trans person or being gay or stuff like that. And through everything, even though personally feel very beat down, I really want that to regain that sense of like grittiness. And I feel like I'm on an okay trajectory in terms of that. And you should try to find beauty in being yourself. Like it's not healthy to lament on like, oh, I'll never be a cis woman, blah blah blah. Um, even though that's like a natural conclusion from the severity of some people's gender dysphoria, but there's beauty in us, and existing. Existing is good enough, and if you're doing your best, then that's enough. Yeah, I guess that. Oops. Yeah, I guess that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah. I think we do need to come together. Okay, well, thank you for coming on, Sasha. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I really miss doing these interviews, and I just want to thank you again for coming on and giving me the opportunity to do one again. It's been a real pleasure here.
All right. Bye, Trans in the AM audience. Hopefully we do more of these.
Yeah. Do you want to plug your socials or anything? I know you've probably got more.
So Reznov Rules. Rules is spelled RULZ, no spaces. That's on Twitter and Twitch and Blue Sky. Reznov Rules. I'm also, I think, Sasha Fem Reznov or Reznov Rules on YouTube, but I haven't uploaded in a hot minute. Yeah, I think that covers it.
Awesome. I'll link everything in the description as well. And this video should be up on Friday. I want to keep doing the interviews on Fridays. I like the alliteration. Perfect. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Thank you so much. I'll catch you later, Aaron.
Have a good one, Sasha. Take care.